Thank you so much for joining us. Please permit me to introduce our esteemed
Good afternoon,
chairman.
Honourable Minister. Good afternoon.
Prince Adefioye, please. Chairman.
Honourable Minister, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I tried to do some charts, and I see that you are away from one platform. I will make sure that I will redeem myself. I won't say more than that. I'll have to find a way to redeem myself.
Okay, sir.
Thank you as usual all the time. Most appreciated.
We all thank you, Chairman. We also have our CEO, Halid El-Dokani. Halid.
Your Excellency, Your Honourable Minister, how are you? And it's always a pleasure and it's a great honor.
Hi, Khalid. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Honourable Minister, we also have our esteemed panelists joining us, and I'll actually ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Teriba, please, because we do have a few minutes before we start.
Honourable Minister, good afternoon, Honourable Minister. Good to see you again. Good to see you again.
Pleasure, sir.
And Mr. Kunle Awobodu, please. Thank you.
It's a pleasure being here, sir. Good afternoon, our Honourable Minister, sir.
Good afternoon, builder. Kunle Awobodu is a builder, not a minister. The professional builder.
And you are our honorary fellow of the Nigeria Institute of Building. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And we also have Amaka Awokolo.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. My apologies for stumbling on that. Good afternoon, sir. It's a pleasure to connect with you. My name is Amaka Wokolo. I am the founder of Blue Tower House Ventures Limited, and I also lead the research and policy advocacy work at Faith Foundation based in Lagos, Nigeria. It's really an honor connecting with you today, sir. Looking forward to insightful discussions.
Thank you.
Pleasure is absolutely mine.
Thank you. And my colleague, Jumoke Adegule.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. It's nice to see you again, sir.
Good afternoon. A pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, sir. And really honored to be part of this panel as well. So thanks to everyone here at Lafarge Africa and to the esteemed panelists that will be joining.
Thank you. And to Arit Okpo, our inimitable moderator for today.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister.
Good afternoon, Arit. Last I saw you was at Amina Mohammed's 16th.
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Symposium. I moderated that. It's a pleasure, sir. It
Don't worry,
is. I interviewed you a few years ago. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad, sir. I was recalling interviewing you when I was with Ebony Live TV, and we popped into Abuja to talk to you. I think that was probably about 6 years ago.
Thereabouts.
It's been a while.
You've been frying some new fish, obviously.
Been trying.
Great.
Thank you. I just make it just under a minute. I'm just going to also, sir, Honourable Minister, introduce my amazing other colleagues. Ginika, who's our head of corporate communications. Aderemi, put on your camera, and Aderemi, who's our head of digital.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Aderemi, you're on mute.
Sorry. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to meet you as well.
Hi, good to see you.
Thank you so much once again, Honourable Minister. I've just give it just another minute. I just want us to start precisely on time, if you permit us, please. Thank you very much. Okay, I make it precisely 2 p.m. So we will start. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Folashade Ambrose Medebem, Director, Communications, Public Affairs and Sustainable Development for Lafarge Africa PLC. Thank you all for joining the third edition of the Concrete Ideas webinar with the theme, New Solutions to Nigeria's Urban Housing. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event. We also welcome you to revisit the content and share it with your colleagues, inclusive of our last two editions, which is all available on YouTube. We also would like to invite your comments and questions. So just type them in and articulate them in the Q&A chat box, and we'll pose them to our speakers during the panel session. I hereby hand over to our chief host and esteemed chairman, Lafarge Africa PLC, Prince Adebode Adefioye, to give his welcome speech. Dear Chairman, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Our special guest of honor, the Honourable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, SAN. Our distinguished thought leaders here present, Architect Sonny Echono, I am not sure he's here, President Nigerian Institute of Architects, Builder Kule Awobodu, President Nigerian Institute of Building, Dr. Ayo Teriba, Chief Executive Officer, Economic Associates, Ms. Amaka Nwaokolo, Founder, Blue Tower House. I'm not sure whether we have the MD of Julius Berger here, but we're expecting Engineer Dr. Lars Richer, and is to be represented by Mr. Stefan Sander, Mr. Khalid El Dukani, the CEO of Lafarge Africa PLC, Ms. Olajumoke Adegunle, Head of Mortal, Lafarge Africa PLC, Mr. Yusuf Ali, Head Technical Products and Innovation, Lafarge Africa PLC, my colleagues, directors of Lafarge Africa PLC on the watch, management and staff of Lafarge Africa PLC, valued stakeholders and partners from the private and public sector, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm most delighted to welcome you to the third edition of our Concrete Ideas webinar series with the theme, New Solutions for Nigeria's Urban Housing. First, I would like to express my special and sincere appreciation to the Honourable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, Senator Mohammed Adamu Alero, Senate Committee Chairman on Works, and to every distinguished thought leader and participant present for making our time to attend today's event. After the last two successful editions of Concrete Ideas, I am pleased that we are here again to deliberate and provide more solutions to the challenges of our industry. Today's topic is critical as there is an urgent need for all industry players to work in synergy to reverse the impending urban housing challenges. It is heartwarming to once again welcome the Honourable Minister to this platform. Since the inauguration of Concrete Ideas webinar series in October 2020 by the Honourable Minister, the platform has steadily become a credible platform for strategic discussions of critical and topical issues in the area of construction and other sections of its value chain. I am happy to announce that some of the key recommendations of the platform are evident in the day-to-day governance policies. For example, the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing implements the Highway Development Management Initiative, HDMI, to attract the participation of private sector in the development of the infrastructure segments. In addition, the Council for Regulation of Engineering (COREN) has mandated professional bodies in the built environment to develop a manual that will complement the Nigeria Industry Standard on Cement, NIS 4441 of 2003, which was part of the recommendations at the second session. With the implementation of some of the key recommendations from the previous series, we're excited that concrete the Concrete Ideas series continue to attract key players within the public and private sectors. Recommendations from these events are being put together as a blueprint to accelerate growth within the sector. We are a leading sub-Saharan African building solutions company and a member of Holcim, a world leader in building solutions, accelerating our world's green transformation. We are committed to building a world that is greener, smarter, and works for all. Once again, I am grateful to the Honourable Minister, all thought leaders, all participants, as well as everyone that has helped in one way or the other to put this event together. Your commitment is recognized and appreciated. With this, let me especially invite the Honourable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, SAN, to give his keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for those very insightful opening remarks. And thank you, participants, for sparing the time to do this. There are a couple of other things I imagine you would want to do at this time and on this day. And sacrificing the time to do this really is enthusing. I think that we're in very interesting, exciting, and if I must say so, very challenging times also, especially for the built industry. And so many things are happening. Mr. Chairman referred to the HDMI, which is the Highway Development Management Initiative. It is the largest undertaking of public road concession ever undertaken on the continent of Africa. But as it unfolds, all of the opportunities around it will be revealed, and I'm sure Lafarge will have more than a passing role to play because of the industry they are in. But let me commend Lafarge for Concrete Ideas. And since its inauguration in 2020, they have kept it going, and I am happy to be re-invited to participate, and I do so very enthusiastically. But I would like to start my intervention at today's session by inviting our attention to a slide of page 16 of the memo for this event that was sent to me by Lafarge, which deals with housing challenges in Nigeria under the memo. Now, it quotes one Leilani Faha, a UN Special Rapporteur on adequate housing, as inviting Nigeria to stop existing housing crisis and forced evictions as informal settlements were ballooning and conditions in them were inhumane. That's a matter for another debate. But the part of the quote is the part that says, quote, while also highlighting a housing deficit estimated at 22 million homes. And that is the part where I want to start my intervention today. Under the caption housing challenges, that is a misdiagnosis of the problem. Nigeria does not have a deficit of 22 million homes. There is no proven data to support that statement or claim. And I thought that this is also a good opportunity. I spent the better part of 2 weeks really discussing this subject. And let me play back, if you permit me. When I took office as Minister for Works and Housing, one of the things that I was confronted with was 17 million homes. So how do we deliver that? What is the data? Where is the source? And somebody said World Bank. So I invited the country manager for World Bank and I said, look, listen, this is credited to you. He says, no, we have no hand in it. We know nothing about it. Then somebody said, oh, it's African Development Bank. So I called the country representative for African Development Bank. And he says, no, we know nothing about it. And then, so I said, where can I go again? So I called the DG of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. Now, DG, you keep all our data and all our numbers. Do you have data about the number of people who need homes in Nigeria? He says, no, we don't have it. But where did this figure of 17 million come from? He says, Minister, calm down. So let's reason through this. I do have one data that is credible, very reliable. I have a data of households in Nigeria because we did that study and we have the data. And we have 35 million households for the whole of Nigeria. A household, by the way, is one family. So he says, if your analysis is correct and 17 million is the deficit, then it means that half of Nigeria is homeless. That doesn't stand up to logical scrutiny. But when we start collecting more data in the future, we will see what we can do. So off I went to the Planning Commission that do the census and says, the next census must include a home ownership and home rental census. I want to know. Because we can't solve a problem that we cannot measure. It's not possible. Now, so what does common sense? And I kept digging and I found where 17 million came from. I found it came from my ministry. In 2012, there was a policy document, and in the preface, somebody just put it there. I've called my predecessor on this desk. That, did you sign this thing? He said yes. And her position is that, look, there was no data to support what was there. So, quote me, Nigeria does not have a 17 million or a 22 million housing deficit. It's a lie. So let's just start there, and I will move on. But two interesting things before I leave that subject. So at the time in 2017, when our household survey was 35 million, the deficit was 17 million. If you look at what percentage of it is, it was 48.57% of the household number, 17 of 35. Now, there has been an updated household survey, which puts Nigeria's national household now at 45. And you know the interesting thing, the housing deficit has followed it. And that's what Leda Farah is now quoting, 22 million. It has moved suddenly, and we haven't had a census. And if you appropriate that again, 22 of 45 gives you also 48%. So people are just adding up. And so, but how bad is the problem? And I think that the topic here of this discussion, which is new solutions for Nigeria's urban housing, tells us where the problem is. It's an urban problem. It's not a rural problem.
Compartments.
So let's go from there. We don't know the number, but it's an urban problem. So in most of Nigeria's rural areas, they don't have housing challenges. In fact, many of the people sweating for an apartment in the city of Lagos, Aba, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, probably own a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom bungalow in their village, empty, unused. And I think, therefore, Lafarge is heading us in the right direction. It's an urban problem. Housing problems have arisen as rapid urbanization has increased. So there is demand and supply issues. Simple. Now, even in those urban centers, and I've traveled all of Nigeria's roads, states by road, there are empty houses, unused houses, unoccupied houses. And therefore, before we begin to even build, the question is, have we optimized the value of what we have? Why do you have a shortage when you have unused assets? And perhaps this is the context of the discussion that I think we should have today. And I will come to it much later because I see that some questions have been set for me to respond to. I will just try to close my opening, therefore, to say that we should begin to think, is there a 22 million housing demand, really and truly? Is there that demand? Because it's a business. So if there's no market, is Lafarge ready to build 22 million homes? Who will buy it? So, but just to say that we, in the last 1 year, have also developed a national policy to increase our use of cement and stone in the built industry, especially for roads. And as a result of that, our ministry was challenged and we have responded to government by developing a new design manual for concrete roads, which we have shared with all the states of the Federation and the FCT at the National Council for Works last year. And as you can see, we are increasing the footprint of concrete roads in the country very slowly but surely. The Apapa Uronshoki Road is one of the new look of what concrete roads in Nigeria can do. Obajana Kaba is one. We are also doing that in Bodo Boni, working with the NLNG. The first two were by your competitors, so I am very, very conscious not to go there, but there is room for more concrete roads in the Nigerian space, and there's a design manual to guide us now. So I thank you very, very much for inviting me and for providing this platform.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you very much. We really appreciate and factual comments. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to our CEO, please, Khalid Eldukan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and please permit me to stand on all existing protocols. Your Honourable Minister, as always, it's not only an honor to have you, but the challenge and the inspiration you bring to the discussion is really very much valuable. And we really appreciate your presence, your insights, and I really look forward to a very, very fruitful discussion with your value that you will bring and the challenge that we need all to face to bring the topic into concrete ideas. Your Honourable Minister, I'm very pleased to welcome you. Your Excellency attended with us the first concrete idea back in October. The inauguration was under your guidance. And again, it's an honor to have you again with us. I'm very pleased to welcome everyone, the thought leaders and the participants to the third edition of the Concrete Ideas webinar with the theme New Solutions for Nigeria Urban Housing. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Concrete Ideas is Lafarge Africa PLC platform for strategic discussions of critical and topical issues in the area of construction and other sections of its value chain. Today's session is the third of the series. The forum was inaugurated by Honourable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. And we are really looking forward to celebrate a one full complete year very soon in our coming session. The commitment of the federal government agencies towards encouraging private sector involvement in critical policies formulation cannot be overemphasized. Today's event signals a call for all key stakeholders within the sector to work together to find lasting solutions to Nigeria urban housing initiatives. Holcim is a leader in sustainable construction and offers the broadest portfolio of low carbon solutions. Our several innovative projects are aimed at finding building solutions that work for people and the planet, whether they are digital tools to empower sustainability and circular economy, breakthroughs in the chemical processes, or shaping the future. We have also 14 Trees, a Holcim joint venture with CDC Group in deploying 3D printing technology at scale to build affordable and low carbon housing and schools in Africa. And we have already started in Malawi with a successful pilot. The EcoPact green concrete can reduce carbon emission by up to 100%. And Susteno is our circular economy cement with 20% recycled concrete. Lafarge Africa, as a member of Holcim, will surely adopt the same measures in Nigeria, and our commitment aligns to the global sustainability strategy of building a better world. It's with excitement and keen attention that I look forward to the high-profile recommendations that will grow to be the fore here today. We all look forward to having a productive and enlightening discussions. With this, let me invite our moderator, Arito Kubu, host CNN International, African Voices Changemakers, to take over the proceedings. Again, finally, Mr. Honorable Minister, thank you so much for your presence with us, and we really look forward to a very exciting discussions today. Arit, to you, please. You're on mute, Arit.
Thank you so much, Khalid, for that very warm welcome. And I extend that welcome once again to our distinguished guest, Honorable Minister, our chairman, and our esteemed panelists. I think that we are going to have a very enlightening, very thought-provoking conversation. And I think that we have a good team with which to address the conversations around urban housing. The chairman has given us a reframing of the conversation, which I really appreciate, talking about housing as predominantly an urban conversation, or as an urban conversation, and optimization as the question. And I can already see our panelists, our audience sending in their thoughts and their perspectives. So I think that we're going to have a very invigorating chat. As the chairman mentioned earlier, this Concrete Ideas webinar is the third session, and each session has addressed a specific issue that has also given us specific outcomes. I like to think of them as concrete outcomes. And so today, as we discuss urban housing, I'm excited about some of the outcomes that we will attain, especially when we think about our focus on sustainability, because not just are we addressing a housing conversation, but we're addressing a housing conversation that ensures that we are at par with what happens in the rest of the world. And so with that perspective, I'd like us to think about some of the, for instance, the issues that could also contribute to the shortage of housing: poverty, urbanization, rudimentary building technology, limited access to land and finance. We've heard about Wholesome's perspective to green building solutions from Khalid, from CCEO. And again, it shows us what is possible, the possibilities that exist. And how do those possibilities come into play when we look at the unique perspective that is the Nigerian building sector? There's some aspects of this conversation that I would like us to keep in mind. The new roles for public housing agencies, housing as a new source of jobs and growth, new building materials, new techniques for urban housing, Lafarge's sustainable approach to green building solutions, new financing solutions for urban housing, new forms of collaborations with construction industry players, because it is a whole value chain, and we cannot talk about solutions in isolation. We have to talk about connecting a more livable and productive city, because the public and private sector have to come together to collectively proffer solutions. And this will improve Nigeria's urban housing challenges in a sustainable and cost-effective manner to befit a large number of Nigerians. And so it is with that that I welcome us to the panel conversation at this point. I will introduce once again all our panelists, and then we will take a few minutes to chat with the Honourable Minister and then expand the conversation to the rest of the panel. So let me just read very quickly, even though I think we all know who he is. But Honourable Minister Babatunde Raji Fashola is a Nigerian lawyer and politician, currently the Federal Minister of Works and Housing. He served 2 terms as Governor of Lagos State, was appointed minister on the 11th of November 2015 by President Muhammadu Buhari as Minister of Power, Works and Housing, and was reappointed Minister of Works and Housing on the 21st of August 2019. It's a pleasure to welcome you once again to this panel, Honourable Minister. I would like to confirm, I'm not sure that architect Sonny Echono is here yet. He's the President, Nigerian Institute of Architects, with a BSc and MSc from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, an MBA from Benue State University, Makurdi, and an MSc in project management from the University of Turin, Italy. Moving on, I would like to also welcome Builder Kunle Awobodu, who is the National President of the Nigerian Institute of Building. He's a board member of the regulatory body, Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, and is a past president of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild. It's my pleasure to welcome the Managing Director, Julius Berger, Engineer Dr. Lars Richter, who should be represented here by the Head of Laboratory and Construction, Mr. Stefan Sandal. I believe that we're still expecting Mr. Sandal as well. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Amaka Nwokolo, founder Blue Tower House, an organization with the mission of contributing to addressing Nigeria's high housing deficit by providing access to affordable housing using innovative, eco-friendly technology and flexible payment systems. I'm very intrigued because I think Amaka's intro also gives us a very good context to this conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ayo Teriba, Chief Executive Officer, Economic Associates, where he provides strategic direction for ongoing research and consulting on the outlook of the Nigerian economy. He's also a member of the Board of Economic Advisors in the Office of the Economic Advisor to the President, where he contributes to the conception of economic policy ideas for the country. It's my pleasure to welcome again Ms. Olajumoke Adegunle, Head Mortar Operations for Lafarge Africa, and a member of the Executive Committee. She's a results-oriented business management professional who has spent over a decade with Holcim as an innovative and empowering leader. She was general manager of Hima Cement in Rwanda, where she led country operations, and has held several pivotal positions in diverse environments in Holcim, spanning Asia to Africa. And our final panelist is Mr. Femi Yusuf, Head Technical Products and Innovation, Lafarge Africa PLC. He's a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers, UK, registered with the Engineering Council, UK, and the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. He's also a member of the Nigerian Institute for Structural Engineers and the Nigerian Society of Engineers. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing your perspectives. Like I said, I'd like to start with a chat with the Honourable Minister, and then use that as the foundation for the rest of the panel. So Honourable Minister, thank you once again for being here on this platform. Your contributions are of utmost importance to this conversation and to finding solutions to the infrastructure needs of the nation. As Executive Governor of Lagos State, you achieved significant milestones in the areas of infrastructural development, educational reforms, water safety, job creation, and so on. Today, we're talking about solutions to Nigeria's urban needs, and you've given us a very good foundation with which to think about this. We are aware of the numerous engagements within your ministry to improve Nigeria's housing deficits. I was intrigued to hear your comments on the national policy on roads, and so I'm excited as well to hear what your vision is for urban housing in Nigeria.
Okay, so here is what we have. And let me say that as I evolve, my thought processes evolve with me. And therefore, I'm more dynamic. The way I look at a problem today may change tomorrow. And so one of the things that come to terms with is that the federal government in a federal arrangement doesn't control land, the states do. So land is a very, very important component for addressing housing solutions. And therefore, governments, even if all the states government were building, as many of them are, housing is a commodity. So it is something that the private sector can leverage their entrepreneurial skills to deliver. And so I'm happy first to observe that in the last 4 years at least, the footprint of private sector players in the real estate sector is increasing. And there's hardly a day now where you're on TV or radio You don't see adverts and all of that, housing, estates, offerings, and all of that. So that's a very interesting place for Nigeria to be, and it's a good place. So what can government do? I think that what government can do to strengthen that space is to use its fiscal and monetary policy muscles to make it even more prolific to play. So bring down the rates, interest and lending rates. Those are fiscal and monetary issues, longer tenure financing, and you can then see. So these are conversations I am having with my colleague, the Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning. That is one thing. The other thing that government can do also, which was what I canvassed at our recent National Council on Lands and Housing. That's a council that involves all the 36 states and the FCT. We hold an annual meeting to discuss policy, was that the state houses of assembly, the state attorneys general must rise up to intervene on behalf of their residents by way of rent control. Because housing for me must be discussed along the terms of ownership and rental. And perhaps before you get onto the ownership ladder, you get onto the rental ladder first. But where you have people asking citizens to pay 3 years rent in advance from salaries earned monthly in arrears, there's a mismatch there. Housing will never be affordable. So, and the bulk of the properties on offer do not belong to government. They belong to citizens, private citizens, and they are in the subnationals. So this is a space where I urge the attorneys general to get creative, find the kind of legislation they can initiate. There are examples to draw from Lagos when I was governor. So, for example, places like Ikoyi, Victoria Island were not covered by that edict because businesses wanted long-term financing for corporate residential quarters. But it was different for places like Surulere, Mushin, Ajegunle, Yaba, and so on. And those are the places where the demand curve is at its sharpest. So, but the lessons from there are not cast in stone, they can be removed. So that's something to look at. The other thing, and one of the conversations we had when Lafarge visited also, is that we must change our building methods. So which population, which strata of our population is in need of housing? Is my children's generation now, the 20-something-year-olds. They are the ones who have the purchasing power. But they don't want 5-bedroom houses. They live in small spaces now, and they carry their rucksack with their laptop and Wi-Fi. They use showers, they don't use baths. So again, we must begin to design for those who have the economic power to really demand and consume. So, and I speak from experience because not only am I ministering over houses, I also have personal property, and I'm trying to develop one along these lines. But the first thing I did was go and do a market survey, what's available. And I saw scores of unoccupied houses. And I said, hold on, we can't borrow money, build a house that there is no demand for. So let's see what the market is like. Maybe COVID has affected the market and so on and so forth. So let's see when things begin to normalize. And finally, if I may just make this point, because at some point I may have to leave, I just want to make this point. Let's also rethink, because this is already happening. Is there anything going to be, are we going to get to a place where it was like before COVID? And it's instructive to ask that question, because it will then be a defining barometer whether rural-urban migration continues. Because if we don't need offices anymore, at least not at the rate at which high-rise buildings were springing up, and we can do a lot of businesses from home, we have to rethink our investment in real estate. So again, if I can talk to you from my village because I have broadband, why should I come to the city and be struggling for a house? And it's going to affect how other businesses arrange. Urbanization, in my view, is partly what informed the development of high-rise clusters, and it has also informed how we feed, how we eat during work hours, fast food deliveries around urban conurbations. And is this going to continue? So as we plan to invest, let's think, what does the future reasonably look like? And my final take really about urbanization and urban regeneration is that there's a fine line there between urban regeneration and gentrification, and we need to be careful. And so there's a way where we must find the balance. But I think that partnerships are the instructive things. The private sector has a big role to play here, and it must be driven by data, science. What's the market saying? You won't want to build more empty houses because people can't afford them, because we overbuilt them, because people don't like the way they've been built. So these are some of the things I hope that the panelists perhaps will weigh in on, and feedback will be useful to us as policymakers.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I would like to ask, I'm thinking about what you say, and my question is centering around accessibility. Because yes, there are many empty houses, and if we have, as yet, we don't have concrete data of how many people are needing accommodation, but we will assume that there are some people that do, and we have lots of empty houses. It speaks to me about an accessibility conversation. So my question would be then, what are your thoughts on low-income housing, on social housing? A UN Habitat report says that 79% of Nigerians live in slums. Where would you then place the policies, and what does the future look like for you in resolving this?
Okay, so a slum, by definition, suggests that there's a house, but perhaps the supporting environment, water supply, waste disposal and management, electricity, sanitation, and all of that. So that's why I said urban renewal programs would be welcome. We did some stuff back in Lagos then, and there's a lot going on. In fact, my ministry has a department called the Urban Renewal Department. So we go through communities' annual budget, design an urban program, urbanization program, and then we fund it through budget, dealing with housing, water supply, healthcare, and all of that. So that's there. And there's no society without this problem, none in the world that I know of. So each society has to deal with them as they come. The other thing to point out, as I said, is that the experience with COVID and the reactions may be the tipping point about urbanization. It may just provide a tipping point, and the process becomes reversed. And what is going on now, we're building over 13,000 kilometers of road and bridge network, repair, expansion, renovation. As those services reach the hinterland, and there's a new economy developing there, quarries where we need materials are not in the cities, they're in the hinterland. So opportunities that people are coming to town to look for is beginning to come closer home to them. The government is focusing on a massive agro policy. Again, you don't plant except you are doing hydroponics in the city center. So there's a lot of land cultivation, processing, packaging going on. So it may slow down that process as we go on. And it may force us to rethink how we approach issues.
You talk about the difference between urban regeneration and gentrification. I would like you to speak a little bit more to that. And then perhaps give us your perspectives on what governments can do, federal, state, local, in then continuing large-scale urban regeneration, because I don't imagine that it's something that can be dealt with at just the federal level. So what roles can governments play? But please break down that difference for us, sir.
Okay, I think the difference essentially is that if the people in the urban area where there is slumming and all of that can have access to the remote, if the intervention goes beyond provision of services like healthcare and all of that, perhaps if you have to remodel the houses, rebuild the houses, and then people have to be relocated and they can't come back in, then you have gentrification essentially, and people have become dispossessed in effect. So renovation, improvement, remodeling is not in itself bad. What causes the problem are the original owners able to come back in? So we have played with some models before, back then in Lagos also, where we had sinking houses on Adeniji Adele. So the plan was, okay, those houses had, I think, 6 units. And we thought that the reason they were sinking anyway was structural issues. Let's bring it down, let's pile. So instead of putting 6 apartments now, we will put 12. And so everybody who was there before comes back. We finance it by the sale of the additional 6 houses. Because that's where you now, so it's like a land bank in the top. That's one example. And there are many things you can play around with. But again, as I said, affordability is not necessarily how much it costs. It is how you ask me to pay for it. So if my salary, for example, is every month in arrears, I have to earn it, and you have asked me to go and bring 3 years in advance of it, I can't afford it. It may well be that if you ask me to pay 3 months in advance, I can go to my employer. There's something I used to know then when I was in law firm employment before I left, called a salary advance. You go and borrow against your salary. So maybe at 3 months rent in advance, I can take a salary advance. The same property then becomes available and affordable and accessible. And this is why I was talking about fiscal and monetary policies, longer tenured mortgages, lower interest rates, and availability of financing and capital. I'm sure Dr. Teriba will weigh more on those issues because those are right up his alley.
Okay, our final question, well, I hope it's my final question. It's generating so many thoughts in my head. You talked about the policy on roads and encouraging more concrete roads. And one of the things that we're talking about now more and more in the environment or regarding the environment is lower CO2 emissions reduction, if possible, to zero. And this is going across various sectors, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, and so on. We're very focused these days on protecting the planet. How can the recycling of construction materials help with this conversation? And what sorts of policies, perhaps, what sorts of initiatives could we implement to encourage recycling of construction materials and improve affordable housing?
Okay, recycling does help. It reduces the scope of excavation that you have to undertake for either laterite or for crushed stones and all of that, if you can recycle some of the material. It also, because you can recycle and reuse on site, it also reduces the footprint of your trucking and the CO2 that comes with them. So a good example is the Abuja-Kaduna Highway. And by using recycled coal mix this thing on it, we are reducing the movement of vehicles, trucks on that road carrying construction materials by their thousands. I don't have the number readily available, but these are conversations I think we can take up of this platform. But that said, let me also make the point that, look, there is consensus about global warming, but there is not consensus enough about what is the most defining cause or contributor rather to the CO2 emissions. Because if you look at the numbers, it suggests to you that pastoral activity, cattle, emissions from cows is bigger than all of what all of us are chasing. But perhaps because some of us like red meat and we haven't found a solution to it, so we don't want to discuss that issue. So we're all focused on the vehicles and all of that. And then when you look at those who are the largest contributors to the scene, what really are they willing to give up? And what are they asking others to give up? But it's a reality. I don't deny the science, but the debate is out there, the jury is out there about what is the most impactful and defining cause that helps us to stay below that 2%.
In that case, when we can say, okay, we don't know for sure what the causes are, what would your opinion be of things we can do in the interim as we look at infrastructural development?
No, I didn't say we don't know what the big causes are. We just don't agree on them globally. But there's so many things. Nigeria signed the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and we signed nationally minimum terms of nationally determined conditions. Just 3 days ago, I think it was on Tuesday, in my ministry here in Abuja, we just unveiled our 1.5 megawatt micro solar mini grid. So essentially, that is thousands of photovoltaic solar panels, reducing our energy footprint by about 40% in this ministry. So we've replaced old air conditioning with 400 new ones that consume 40% less energy. We replace all our incandescent bulbs in the ministry, 2,600 light fittings replaced with light emitting diodes. So our diesel consumption will go down from 700,000 liters a year to a little over 100,000 liters a year. So those are the things that one ministry has given up. And Mr. President is saying, can you replicate this for other ministries? So those are happening on the Abuja-Kano highway, for example. I told you about what our contractor is doing there, recycling and using materials. So, but we still have infrastructure to build, and we're going to use cement, we're going to use limestone, and we need to keep our hosts in business while we try to catch up with the rest of the world. And even those who have built more than we're building are spending doubles of trillions in expanding their infrastructure. So the competition is not waiting. And that's why I said we can't all fully agree about who should give up more and who has caused more damage. But we know that there's a problem.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I hope that you will be around till the end of the panel, because I would like to hear your closing thoughts after we've taken our perspectives. But now it's my pleasure to open up this conversation, especially as the Honourable Minister has given us perspectives. I'm looking forward to hearing from the architectural perspective, from the research perspectives, from the financing perspectives, what next steps look like, state of affairs and next steps. I saw Architect Echono just now. I think, well, we'll wait for him to come back on. But in the meanwhile, let me start with you, Hilda Awobodu. We're talking about sustainable solutions. How would you say your organization is facilitating the use of sustainable solutions as we talk about Nigeria's construction industry?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Honorable Minister, I observe the established protocol. This topic is very thought-provoking for those of us in this. This is the time we're supposed to separate theory from rhetoric and make sure that our thoughts are translated to practice. Some time ago, the Honourable Minister, then as the Governor of Lagos State, set up a technical panel, a technical committee to review the law of physical planning and urban development in Lagos State, headed by Architect General Rees. I was a member of that panel, of that committee. The current Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Sanwo-Olu, was our vice chairman. We had an opportunity to discover certain abnormalities in our built environment. Let's take Lagos Island as an example. We made some research, some studies. We discovered that some of those buildings on Lagos Island were suffering from spoiling of concrete. That is, you will discover when you check the underneath the suspended slab, the soffit, you will notice the reinforcement, steel reinforcement coming out of the concrete work, the deck becoming corroded. Then you wonder what could be the cause, the effect of salinity on steel reinforcement bars. What happened to the effectiveness of the cement or the concrete? Then you start to think aloud. How could we have steel reinforcement bars that will not be susceptible to effect of salinity? Because the sand from the lagoon, the sand around the ocean contains salt. Salt and steel reinforcement bars are not, they react when they are together, when they are knit together. So, at the same time, some of these buildings, because of the fact that they were poorly constructed, might not stand the test of time. So we will need to demolish them. The thought of the generation came into our hearts that when you think of safety, some of these buildings must be brought back. But you are bringing such buildings down. What about the waste you are going to generate? So that quickly brought me back to an observation that I made a few weeks ago. In my estate, a building, a destroyed building was being demolished. For about 2 weeks, manual labor. And I noticed the volume, the quantity of waste being recovered. Now from concrete, from concrete blocks. Then this happened to be the recycling we have been talking about. We talk of blocks, concrete blocks. It's so common in our own system of construction. Assuming we design them to be of interlocking cost, that is system of arranging the blocks, then we could as well dismantle them technically so that you can reuse them at another site, not demolishing, and you will have a lot of debris. So take that as part of sustainability.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, I want us to continue this, but you've given two very interesting points. What speaks to an initial, I want to say maybe a lack of awareness of our unique climate situation in relation to steel reinforcement, and also recycling building materials. I'm going to crave your indulgence to pause that for just a second, because I would like us to explore some other conversations, some other aspects of this conversation, and come back to you, sir. You present us a very fascinating foundation. But I want to talk go over to Architect Echono. I don't know if you can put on your camera, sir, and just go ahead and unmute for me. In your work as an architect, sir, I'm interested in knowing your responsibilities when it comes to this conversation about building a sustainable housing sector. Can you give us an overview of some of your responsibilities, some of your expectations, if you can hear me, sir? Architect Echono, can you unmute for me if you can hear me? Or indicate by chat if you have any issues. Okay, sir. I will wait for you to be able to rejoin. And once you can rejoin, just notify me, sir, so that we can go ahead and hear your question or hear your answer to that question. We're talking about sustainable housing. We're talking about accessibility. We're talking about working with an understanding of our unique relationships with the environment, as Builder Wobodu established for us, as well as Nigeria's, again, very unique climate. And Ms. Nwokolo, your organization incorporates all of these things: eco-friendly solutions, access to flexible payment services, addressing this deficit. I would like to ask you, in the course of your work, how close would you say we are to reaching a point of balance in the housing sector? The Honourable Minister has given us some information and he has told us, we don't have as much data as we would like. But your work addresses this, I want to say, in the day-to-day. So in your perspective, where do you think we are?
Thank you, Arit. Can you hear me clearly and okay? Okay, excellent. So thank you very much. I am excited and very thrilled that the Honourable Minister provided that very useful context, because I think that when I think of the work that we do, the initial data and statistics we were working with was 10 million, a deficit of 10 million. Now we hear 22 million. Then sometimes you hear 30 million. So I think that first things first, if we're talking about achieving balance, it would definitely be what the Honourable Minister has spoken about, which I'll re-echo, which is data, right? First things first, we need to do some form of mapping, okay? Where are we? What exactly is the current deficit? And then we can now begin to address the different layers behind that, because again, like some of us have already mentioned, the way I view the housing challenge or issue, okay, the Honourable Minister says we shouldn't call it a challenge. So the housing situation in Nigeria will be from an availability perspective and then the accessibility perspective. For availability, we're talking about houses that exist, right? Or the process of putting up additional houses to meet the demand that exists, right? And then when we talk about accessibility, we're saying, how do people, individuals, access the current houses that exist? I'm so happy that the Honourable Minister mentioned the issue around lump sum upfront payments. That's a major, major, major issue. And so if we're supposed to look at the two from this perspective, availability, there are several layers to that as well, right? So we'll talk about land, and then we'll talk about ease of access to land. The Honourable Minister also mentioned that state governments are the ones, in charge of giving out land. But sometimes to the layperson, it's difficult to understand all of this because the process isn't exactly clear, you know? So it's really cumbersome. So how do we ease that process of having people access land to create or develop houses for people who are in need of it, right? So that's one. When we now talk about accessing land, we also now need to talk about being able to build on the land that you've accessed, right? And that's where I think the door of opportunity is open to innovative building technology, right? It's interesting how right now you have a lot of young players in the space. So it's quite exciting because you have a lot of people who are also thinking with a solution mindset, right? How do we solve this problem? So it's no longer a government issue. We're all in it together, right? I have friends who are in Ogun State, Ibadan, are saying things like, oh, I'm trying to build or introduce fired clay, adapt fire clay to, you know, build houses that will be significantly more or less expensive, right, than when you use the traditional building system of cement and blocks. I personally have experimented with aerated blocks, which I absolutely love because one, it looks like the regular building technology, except that it uses less cement. And so in the end, you have lighter blocks, which are stronger. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but they're lighter, they're stronger. So in the event, we do not pray for that there's a collapse. The casualty rate is less, right? And then the beautiful thing about that is that it also allows for natural cooling. And that for me is huge because in this part of the world, our temperature is hot most of the year, right? So that technology particularly appeals to me. But then when we talk about building, I think that this is an area where there's room for just diverse innovative technology to be introduced. And thankfully, you have a lot of young people who are also beginning to come into this space and play in this space. Now, we also now need to talk about the issue of access to funding and finance, which you mentioned, Arit, which is a major issue because as you can imagine, real estate is capital intensive. So whether you're using innovative technology or you're using the traditional method, you still need financing. I'm also happy that the Honourable Minister has taken cognizance of this. He's speaking with some of his colleagues around this area because I personally think that if we can figure out how to provide affordable finance to players within the space, I think that it would ease the process of accessing houses, because if I'm able to, or if I access funding at a very high rate, ultimately I'll pass off the cost of that to the end user, right? To the people who are going to rent from me, to the people who are going to buy from me. And so if we're able to tackle the issue of financing, yes, then it can, you know, in a way ease the burden that will be passed on to the end user. And then when we introduce flexible payment systems, which is something that we are also experimenting with. And I am so excited that my Honourable Minister, again, he's also aware of this. He's also having conversations around this. Once we're able to do that, the issue of affordability now becomes something that is real. It's not something that we just talk about and, you know, it sounds like the right thing to say. We can actually implement that because Arit, we on the streets, we know that the current situation is that you still have to pay upfront. You still have to pay 2 years upfront. You have to, you know, settle up the agents and all of that. So I think that,
I hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
I hear you and I'm hearing your enthusiasm. I'm hearing your very clear awareness of the everyday challenges. It's something that really needs to be, well, we're doing that now. We're addressing it now. And I'm looking forward to us able to come up with solutions. Architect Fashola, it's so good to see that you can join us. It's a pleasure to have you on. If you could just unmute for me, sir. I'm going to repeat my question, and that is, in your capacity as an architect, can you tell me about some of the responsibilities that you have to take on as we talk about building and developing a sustainable housing sector? Give us an overview of some of your responsibilities.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, my colleague, presidents, and every other participant in this webinar. It's a very interesting topic. I've had the advantage of looking at both sides of the equation. I was involved in housing policy formulation. I was the secretary of the National Housing Policy Implementation Committee for several years. And the same issues we've been talking about are still festering till this day. And if we're going to address issues of housing, not only from an architect's perspective, but actually even as a policy maker, you're going to have to be addressing issues around what is the actual target? What is the effective demand for housing? Where do you need the houses? What type of houses? They are going to have to address issues about land. The prevailing laws that we have, how are they supportive of housing? How do you access land? Currently, the Land Use Act vests land in the state governments. Some of them are devolved to local governments. So how easy is it to access these lands with infrastructure? And how do you organize your space? For example, even addressing the mentality of our people. We are very possessive in terms of our relationship to land. We want to defend space. So it's difficult to sell the concept of mass housing. But again, if you are going to have everybody owning individual houses, they are not talking about increase in cost of infrastructure. They are also talking about inefficiencies in production systems. I don't want to dwell too much on that. Then I hear a lot of people talk about housing finance. Except we have an effective and efficient housing market, we're not going to be able to solve the issue of housing in the country. Because currently, as everybody said, if you need to build a house or to buy one, you need to mobilize all the resources yourself and pay in bulk. But in other countries, as you all know, the housing market itself is a major segment of the national economy. We need two issues about housing finance. First, the interest rates should be at least affordable. And two, the funding itself has to be long-term, because except you have the mix of both, that you have access to long-term funds at concessional interest rate, you will not be able to make housing affordable. And we try to do this at the level of policy. When we register private mortgage institutions, we created the National Housing Fund that it should mobilize resources. First, for people who want to build houses, they can access construction loans, and also for those who want to access or buy the houses to be able to get long-term funds and pay back over a period of their working life. A lot of that went very moribund. Then issue of accessing land, we created instruments like what the Honourable Minister has resuscitated now, with the Site and Services Scheme, to try and provide infrastructure so you can at least share that cost with eventual owners of the land. And then to make also acquisition of land easier. So you make bulk acquisition from state governments and you can now pass it on to individual owners. But the problem with that also is that our housing market today is dominated by people who don't need the houses. People are buying their third or fourth house and then probably wanting to rent it to those who really need it. So the issue of targeting is very important, that who are within our segment of the population. Yes, there is the aspect of social housing, which you have to provide for your citizens. But effectively, for a vibrant housing market, you need to identify what segment of the population require this house. Where do they need them? We can't do political housing, dividing maybe 100 houses in every local government. That's political, because in some local government, they don't need the houses. Others, they require them. In some cases also, our interventions have to focus on infrastructure. For many, as you see in our rural communities, it's not so much the physical house that is absent, but the fact that access to clean water, access to power, electricity, and the energy mix that we have can address some of those to ensure that we also have affordable energy for our homes, and to do it in such a smart way that we can use the limited energy resources we have for both production, for habitat, and so on and so forth. Then coming to, as a professional, we need to address the issue of local building materials and technologies. Because as long as we keep importing, and you know what is happening in the market, in the foreign exchange market today, the cost of imported materials will be transferred to the end user. So if you can develop, promote local building materials, encourage our people to invest in the production and exploitation of local alternates in all the forms that we have, then we can also create jobs and also spread the benefits of that sector, which is usually in many countries the main sustainer of their economy. So for Nigerians to also benefit from that, we need to increase the proportion of the industry that is in Nigerian hands, the number of people that are participating. Then we're even going to, we can go down to the issue of even the manpower we need for the housing construction sector. For goodness sake, we have neglected the artisans production sector for so long that today, if you are looking for very good artisans, you are having to go to Ghanaians, people from Togo, from Republic of Benin, who are coming to do POP, do masonry, do carpentry, metal work here. So we need a robust program on skills development to ensure that our young men who are out there and without jobs can get these skills within 3, sometimes 6 months, not more than a year, to be trained in these specialized trades, and they can now begin to contribute to the economy and not become problems for us as they are currently. So I know there are so many guys wanting to pitch in, but I believe that I'm very glad with the Honourable Minister for most of the interventions he is also doing in the ministry. But unfortunately, he inherited a ministry where for more than 15 years or thereabout, nothing happened in the housing sector. So he will need to keep doing a lot more and relinking, rebuilding relationships before we can really get a hang of what we need to do. But ultimately, my final goal is that first, there's a need to involve professionals for advice and to engage the private sector more. From experience, we have found that the state government concentrates on social housing. Otherwise, you find out that more often than not, because of the inherent issues around government production of houses, you find that either because of poor targeting or because of rent seeking by contractors who are eventually involved, or even the officials who are involved in the supervision, you end up buying houses that you have to spend so much money again to try and bring it up to standard. And the cost too, when you think about subsidizing housing, you end up either subsidizing the contractors or subsidizing the officials rather than the end users, because the costs tend to be higher than the actual cost. So we need to take a good look at all of this mix. And I believe that we're on the right course. As I said, I'm very happy with what is happening in the ministry out there now. And as architects, we are also happy to be able to lend our advice and professional expertise, particularly in the area of more efficient design, use of technology, energy efficiency, promoting local building materials, and also ensuring that the right quality of people or the right specializations of people engage so that the little resources we have to invest in the house are not wasted. Thank you very much.
You give such interesting perspectives, capacity development, supporting infrastructure. Again, our relationship with land in rural areas, even in the urban areas, access to finance. The financing conversation comes up again. And I'm very curious because in addition to talking about finance, we're also engaging with inflation. So Dr. Teriba, I'm going to come to you, sir, and ask that in your opinion, how would you say that inflation affects public housing development? And how do you think we can address this challenge in a timely manner? Because as we've seen, all the perspectives have ended up around access to finance for both the builders and the occupants or the house owners, prospective house owners. What are your thoughts, sir?
Right, thank you very much. I had 2 questions. Inflation was one of them, and I thought that in the context of real estate, inflation is by no means the most important question, in the sense that real estate is a very good hedge for inflation. One reason people withdraw money from the bank and they put in real estate is that while the money in the bank may not protect, the value of your wealth from erosion by inflation, real estate certainly would protect the value of your wealth from inflation. But the opportunities, presented by the real estate sector is what I find more interesting. And the Honourable Minister has characteristically touched all the important issues, and the panelists have addressed quite a number of them. So if you don't mind, I would like to chip in on some of the problems identified on how we could address some of them. I would like to commend the organizers of this initiative. And I'm glad that this is the third session you said. And I'm glad also for the progress reported. The first session led to progress on articulation of the, a path for roads. And today I see that we are more interested in housing, especially urban housing. It's all very good, but I'll emphasize that we may not have the luxury of picking and choosing what segment of the built environment we want to address, because it is a system. You can't separate urban from rural, because at the end of the day, they are linked. The transit routes, the speed with which you can, travel in between urban and rural determines your choice, whether you want to walk in urban and live in rural. If you have high-speed rail, you don't have to live there. And the Honourable Minister also mentioned the impact of COVID on working from home. So if you don't have to commute, you don't have to live in a urban center. And the reason why you stay in a urban center is not just to work, it's not just access to work. Some stay in urban center because urban centers have more amenities than rural settlements. So the reason they live in urban center is residence, even for retirees. You don't have to go to work, you don't have to shuttle. So you may not be able to pick and choose. If you make progress with roads, that's fine. Making progress with amenities solves some of the problems as well, particularly transportation amenities like the rail, that the president recently came to commission in Lagos. It's going to change, the answers you get to some of the questions that have been put on the table. And for a dialogue that is in its third session, I'd like to urge that we try to write a few things down. For example, what's the carbon footprint? We've talked about it, but it remains woolly. So it's not a bad idea if part of this initiative is to try and get, concept notes, maybe a page or two on carbon footprint of the built environment in Nigeria, compared, for example, with pastoral, like the minister has highlighted. Then what's the decarbonization roadmap? So when you're talking of carbon footprint, where does most of it come from? Is it, generating the materials used in the built environment? Is it the fuel? Is it the waste? The energy used, the waste, and the rest of it. So I see those two as, 2 pages of concept notes that will help us to define a policy path more clearly. Then number 3, yes, I agree with the Honourable Minister that perhaps urban renewal is what we should be talking about. You have a lot of houses that are in decay, the residential, not just residential, to the point that it's a system, offices, shopping districts, where you're looking at the central business districts, or what you call city centers, they're all dilapidated. Or the inner cities, they call downtown, the slums. You have a slum you have slums in Abuja, you have slums in Lagos, next to every central business district. Perhaps if you have a program for renewing those, so if you have another concept note, for example, on opportunities for the development, where is it the largest? Is it in residential? Is it in abandoned government, property, which litters all over the country? And then importantly, the value architecture. See, the dialogue about urban redevelopment or real estate management is not about how to finance it. This is probably government's biggest source of revenue, if well managed. If you look at the property that each of the 3 tiers of government own, it could be idle land that could be redeveloped for lease. It could be built structures, the Honourable Minister was speaking about developing 6 apartments to 12. It could be built structures like the Federal Secretariat, or the barracks, which are really slums as well. It's not residential slum, it's official slums. The Miami markets and the rest, like the stadium, abandoned projects all over. So if government could allow the developers to buy redevelopment rights on those, India, China raise a significant fraction of the annual budget from it. Hong Kong funds 1/3. It funds the whole of its capital budget from it with some surplus. So it's something that we fund the government. It's not so the question is not about how do we fund real estate development. It's the question of there is a lot of value to be created in that space. And how do we organize concerted government, private sector action to unlock those resources? And of course, if there are gains to be made, then there will be gainers, there will be losers. So going after the gain is efficiency. If you do matter, or my 12, Igbo, Oshodi can be renewed. We all gain from it. So who gains from? So you must also have maybe 1 or 2 pages about that value. That value. Who are the gainers? Who are the losers? And how do you transfer some of the gains to compensate the losers?
If you can pause there for me, not because this conversation is so fascinating, but I feel like we barely started, and I have to look at the time, and I want to hear from Jumoke, and I also want to hear from Frank, and I have another round of questions, so I need to be very effective with our time and actually ask all our panelists to please give me, as broad as this is, to give me your best sound bites. I'm going to ask you all to assume that we all do my job, and just let's do as many sound bites as we can so that we can maximize the amount of information we're sharing. Ms. Adekunle, I want to ask you, I was listening to both Amaka and I believe Architect Chono talk about the use of indigenous housing materials, talk about rethinking the housing materials we use. Now, you have broad experience in construction. What would you say is the next most important step to take? There's so many things popping up. There's so many aspects of this conversation, and they all seem equally important. In your opinion and from your experience, what's the next thing to think about?
Thank you so much, Eric. And please permit me to stand on existing protocols. I would say it's innovation. I think as a country, we need to get extremely conscious about innovation. What we've seen is even when there are plug and play solutions, they don't necessarily plug and play. So we need to be more creative to say what are solutions that we can take from the global stage and apply to our local practices. We need to set up think tanks and all sorts of, enabling environments for people to come up with new things. We've seen it. I mean, it's already happening in some cases. We have developers who go into partnership with landowners. They don't bother about acquiring land and all that stuff. They partner, they give them some of the units, they sell the rest to recover their capital. That's bypassing the challenges we have around land acquisition, land ownership, land transfers. We've also seen where developers offer staged payments, and that allows people to pay stage by stage, especially in case of buying of property. This is a solution that would naturally come from the finance industry, but no, it's coming from the developers themselves. And it also addresses the challenge that we see a lot of times with trust, because in a lot of cases, people have lost money. You give to a developer, doesn't do what he says he will do or she says she will do, and the money is gone. But with these staged payments, people are able to watch the progress and then pay if they're happy with it. So we are already innovating, but we need to do more. What can we take from data science? We're talking here about data. There's a lot of advancement in the world in data science, artificial intelligence. What can we take from these areas and bring into our own local context? We have fintech exploding, and Nigeria is one of the leading emerging markets when it comes to fintech. How do we marry this to the way we do cooperatives locally, the way we save locally, which is our famous Ajo Isusu style? What can we do to upgrade that, looking at what's happening today in terms of technology? So we do have many areas. When we talk of construction technology, which is your question, there are a lot of local practices, but they do not give us sometimes what we need in terms of speed or what we need in terms of what the market is even asking for. So my colleague will talk a bit more about advancements in 3D, but if we take construction technology and we put it aside, even the process of construction, there's so much we can achieve within that system. So how can we cut down waste in construction? We do have a lot of waste in the way we work. One of the panelists mentioned artisan. I think Bilda Owood is here. When it comes to artisans and the way they work, how can we get speed? How can they be more professional? What else can we do in terms of industrialization of building materials, for example? What more can we do? Maybe bring in walls to site and slabs to site. And these are all things that Lafarge has been working on for years, especially in terms of the construction technologies we've explored, and 3D is the new one we're working on. And also in terms of mortar as a means of pre-mixing material and bringing to site. So you cut off.
Hearing, yes, more about all of those. And I know that Mr. Yusuf is going to also give me a little bit more perspective on Lafarge Africa's innovations. I'm told that the Honourable Minister would like to give us a quick perspective. So I will just hand over to him. And then Mr. Yusuf, I will ask you to speak to innovation in relation to the work that Lafarge Africa is doing. So Honourable Minister.
The truth is that I have to go to another meeting. Not that I wanted to give a quick perspective and you asked me to wait till the end. But as you can see, not all of us have your gift of sound bites. And therefore, and as you would also see, there are many layers to this really. And the more you peel, the more you see. And it's very detailed. I just would like, if you permit me, just to say that in terms of sustainable housing, really, there are so many things to it. And all of the discussants have admirably unpacked them even in very short space. So maybe our host will have to bring us back at some point in time, and we continue this conversation because there are issues of accessibility, acceptability, affordability, and all of these have different other layers. Acceptability, for example, how is it built? How is it designed? Accessibility, we've talked about land. So you might have heard about this ease of doing business council that the president set up. Because the federal government doesn't control the land, we have to work with the states. And the issues we're working on with them, with the vice president and chairman of council, is the process, how long it takes to get land, how long it takes to get a building permit and a building approval. Those are all issues. But that is only part of the story. The other part of the story is that in some places, there are cultural issues where you have to build in such a way that because of their culture, they must have a courtyard at the back. Especially in the northern part of the country, they won't live in blocks of flats. You need an extra toilet, an extra convenience. Every extra costs money. So how is it going to be paid for? So these are the results of surveys that we did in 2016. And we found that there are cultural differences between North and South and how they live. But that is only a part of the story. Amaka referred to building types and all of that. So those are matters of policy for us under the building code. So long as the house can resist wind, storm, keeps you cool, keeps you safe, as a matter of policy, yes, our building code allows you to build it. And we're looking to energy efficient houses now, more windows, more daylight use, and less energy consumption. So all of these are welcome. So whether you build with cement, whether you build with brick, whether you build with timber, whether you build with the houses, innovations where people are using used containers and they're delivering houses. So all of this is welcome. Government is not going to impose any one thing except minimum standards. Of course, there are also issues. Sustainability. Is the house transferable to the next generation? So when you were talking about social housing, mass housing, they have different meanings. And they may not be the house where the next generation wants to grow up. And go and look at what we're seeing with all those low-cost housing schemes. The children don't want their children there. They want to move. So is that sustainable? Can it pay for itself? And also, is it connected to the financial industry? Why should I keep a house locked up for 5 years? And nobody's charging me interest on a loan and all of that. So again, those are linkages we need to forge. And there's just a lot. And in terms of urban regeneration and renewal, I agree with Dr. Teriba about those maintenance and all of the things that it does. But the question is, who pays for it? And this is one of the issues that we're seeing unraveling in the collapse of the building in the United States. They have detected those defects, and they were getting bills of about 15 million naira, $15 million per resident. And they were saying, who's going to pay? And we had that problem in Lagos too. The houses that Jack Conde built, the owners couldn't paint. I was the one painting for them, but I'm not the owner. So these are real life issues that we need to deal with. I just would like to digress a little bit from the conversations around where the best artisans are. The truth is that we've repeated a conversation to ourselves for an entire generation, that the best builders are from Ghana and Benin. That's not what recent conversations tell me. Ghanaians are now saying that the best builders are Nigerians. That's what the recent conversation is. And this is from people who are in the built industry. So let's unlearn old and odious things and learn new things. And really, those are the summary of my interventions. And but clearly, it's a multi-layered conversation, and I hope we could go on and on. Regrettably, I have to go and do other things.
Thank you so much for that, Honourable Minister. You again have expanded the conversation and challenged us to think about several other things. Before you leave, I would like to welcome the chairman, Prince Adefioye, to please just say thank you for coming and give you his best wishes.
I think, as usual, we have had the pleasure of having the Honourable Minister here. I sat in some conversations very, very early in my career, and it was Accenture trying to do job evaluations in my company. And they went around and they were asking people, what's the definition of a manager? And they went across 16 companies of John Holt, asking young people, middle people, senior people to define a manager. And the winner with my boss was an Englishman then, was one young lady who said, somebody who can still think. I think it's always a pleasure to have the Honourable Minister around. He started by defining his flexibility around problem solving, how he has become more flexible. I think it's just defining his capacity to continuously think. He's a lawyer, and in 2 rounds that I've sat with him here, he has become an engineer, he has become an architect, he has become a builder, and I'm not really surprised that the president of the Institute of Building said he's a fellow. I think he has earned it. I think for all the hours you have spent trying to solve Nigerians' problem, I can only pray that God will reward you, and generationally it will be passed through also to your children. Always a pleasure to have you. We'll be happy to expand this conversation. It's clear that it's really elastic and we are not really going to get a proper landing to it. And on your advice, I think the next one will still be an extension of this one. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to have you. And with you, I think there is hope for Nigeria, really. For all the panelists that are here, the architect, the builder, the minister, I think we're having a conversation that really is focused towards solving what we can define as a challenge. And I think the direction that it's going really is heartwarming to have all our people here concentrated. And for me, I think there is hope for our country. Thank you, Honourable Minister. It will be a pleasure to welcome you again to the next one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Honourable Chairman, for that. And on that note, because you are right, it's such a multi-layered conversation, sir. And it seems that whenever we come up with one solution, there are then other factors around that we should think about. Mr. Yusuf, I was coming to you because Ms. Adekunle talked about some of the innovations that Lafarge Africa and Holcim are developing, mortar, 3D housing across the continent and so on. So can you give us a brief perspective on some of the innovative solutions that Lafarge Africa is developing towards affordable and sustainable housing, and how we can think about this, the progress that has been made, the journey, in light of our new realities with the COVID-19 pandemic and the ripples across several sectors of our global economy?
Good afternoon, Arif. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Thank you for giving me the platform. I would like to stand on existing protocol with special thanks and appreciation for the Honourable Minister of Works, the Chairman of Lafarge Africa PLC, all other honourable distinguished members of the panel. It's really an honor to be here today, and it's very interesting that has a major impact to our lives. Listening through the entire panel, we see that the key topics are around affordability, sustainability, durability, manpower, skills transfer, building technology, how can we be more innovative, and even finance. What will be very interesting to everybody, and I'm sure most of my panel members will agree, if not everyone, that the innovative solutions, the methodologies are linked to finance, because whatever pot of money you have can be stretched by how much you can be creative with it. But then the question is, how do you know what method to apply? So that's where we come in, and also in terms of durability. So for us at Lafarge, we've been doing quite a lot of work in the background, and this has taken us a couple of years. What we did essentially was to use a simple methodology of looking at the envelope of a building and trying to identify what components are critical. Where do we use the most material? Where does the solution starts to come out from there. We've moved quite well to even the methodology of construction, where we'll talk about 3D printing. But if you look at our 32.5, which is a general purpose product, for example, this is a product that we've been using for quite a long time. And I'll be happy to tell you that this product has evolved from being just a general purpose product. It is now a product we classify as our green product, which we will launch very soon. It has met all the classification standards. And what this will do is that it will give you the comfort and the joy when you live in a building where you know that the material was built with an economically sustainable product. Health-wise, even the psychology of living in that house is going to improve. And then we move on to durability. The key problem with durability in Nigeria has always been the quality control, quality assurance. That has been missing for a very long time, which was why we brought in the issue of premix. That's the ready mix product. There has been a lot of debate about, the affordability, about whether it can be replicated on many sites. But what the numbers show is that the adoption of premix is growing in the urban centers. I know there's been a lot of argument whether there is the housing problem is an urban problem or not, but let's park that aside. Let's focus on the solutions for now, and then we know how to apply that. So with your quality product being provided sustainably, you reduce the issue, you enhance durability and you are likely to reduce the issue of faster deterioration of buildings. Then we move on to sustainability. So sustainability looks at two things. One is the reuse of materials and also the methodology. So I'll take the reuse of materials first. There's been a lot of talk about, yes, when buildings go old, how do you get those materials to be reused and all that? And we have technology within our Lafarge Holcim group. Now we are now Holcim. to be able to reuse materials sustainably, and also to target aspects of the building that will ensure that that building is more energy efficient, and also the fact that you want to make sure that all the components of the structure are working together. Currently, what we have is that because we are having this challenge of not moving sustainably and effectively manpower from one construction site to another, so that people learn the trade, replicate their knowledge, and also impact those the younger ones coming before them. This transfer of knowledge is weak. So within the Lafarge Africa space, we've tried to tackle most of this problem. There was one other topic which was very interesting about the deterioration of buildings around water bodies.
If you can round up for me in 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll try to round up with the 3D print. I was just trying to, we've done so much, and most people do not know how much work we've done. So I'll try to round up with 3D printing. So when you take all these solutions, you realize that we've done a lot to be able to solve some of these problems. And now we're moving into the capability to be able to construct more affordable buildings through 3D print. And what will 3D printing do? 3D printing will take that leg of use of ready mix to the next level, where you are not just supplying the material to site, you are now even influencing the way construction is done on site. And we are hoping very, very soon to commercialize this and partner with developers out there, and also interested professionals. So when you package all this together in summary in 5 seconds, I know you've given me 10 seconds, is that a lot of these solutions we have developed can be implemented to solve quite a number of problems that the panel members have spoken about. What we now need to see is collaboration, coordination, and implementation on our project. Thank you.
Collaboration, coordination, and implementation. I think that's such an excellent note to conclude your very fascinating presentation. I looked through the questions, the general questions, because we can continue for hours. This topic has so much scope, but I wanted to make sure that we were hearing from the audience as well. And there are many questions about, again, financing, about rural infrastructure, about repurposing housing, about social accommodations. And I know that the Honourable Minister had spoken to that, and we've also heard perspectives from our panelists here. So I will ask that the audience considers that we have spoken somewhat about financing, about repurposing infrastructure, about social housing. There's a fascinating question that I would like us to reflect on, and that is the place of proper research in understanding our baseline in terms of the actual housing deficits. Because the one thing that has been established is that we don't have the strongest information, to use as a baseline. So Architect Echona, I'm going to ask you, sir, in your opinion, what kind of research should we be deploying? How can we effectively utilize the best research methodologies to give us a baseline figure from which we can then say, okay, we are solving the problem. These are the steps. This is how far we have to go.
Again, thank you. Currently, we do have the Federal Office of Statistics carry out every 2 years a survey of households in which they gather data related to occupancy rate, number of people occupying a house, number of people who have access to clean water or to power and so on. It could be a good starting point, but essentially working together with all the other agencies involved, because the issue of data has to be addressed from a very comprehensive and integrated approach. We need NIMSI, we need the Population Commission. So we actually work with reliable data. The kind of guesstimates we work with don't help in actual planning. So by the time we know the identity of every Nigerian, for example, where you live, what you're doing, what the structure that you are into, then we do it from the base. Every local government, every ward, they've been able to do that for a voting population. So why don't we also use that data or extract from that to know about the demand for housing? And there are other ways that you can also do beyond surveys, that you can extrapolate from employment figures, from membership of associations, that you can collate information. And when you integrate this, because if you have an overlay of various data, you'll be able to integrate information, and thereafter you can now extract what you want. Now, in terms of further social research, we need to address the issue of income levels in this country. Because for us to do proper targeting, you need to know the concept of affordability. How much do you earn? How much, what proportion of your earnings can you devote, or what constitutes disposable income? What can you afford? Because that tells you how much you can pay. No individual is expected to pay more than 20% of his income on accommodation. So if you are going to have to do that, that will help you determine what type of housing you can afford. Not necessarily, of course, we have an inverse relationship here, that the poor are more likely to have bigger family sizes in this country than those that can afford. Again, that is something we need to address. That's why everybody talks about us addressing the huge population explosion and the high rate of growth of our population, that some think is a demographic dividend. I don't think so, because we're not preparing that population well, and our ability to grow our economy, to expand opportunities, is not keeping pace with the rate at which we are growing in terms of population. So we need to take another look at that. But for those who are presently available, we should accept the reality that it is not everybody that is going to own a house. We should also accept the reality that the nature, our concept of housing, it differs from various parts of the country, from rural to urban, from north to south, and so on. So we should design housing that is also suited for the various communities, to the various segments of the population. The younger segment don't mind living in flats, 1-2 bedrooms, but as they get older, probably they want to now begin to own the property, and so on and so forth. So I think we should use both the conventional means of getting data and conducting research, and also be able to aggregate using technology to see how we can lean or can harvest some of the data that are already out there to get actual housing demand in the country.
Thank you so much, sir. We have less than 5 minutes, believe it or not. And I'm going to ask our distinguished panelists to do something that even I consider frankly impossible, which is to give us a 1-minute encapsulation of what next steps look like. 1 minute each. I will be very strict, just out of necessity, because there's so much more to say, but unfortunately we don't have the time to. So I'll start with you, Builder Wobodu. In 1 minute, what do you think, what's your summation of this conversation? What should we be looking at next?
Yeah, my summation is so simple and direct. We should match our words with action. In December, a delegation of Nigerian Institute of building professionals, held a meeting with Lafarge management on the need to jointly embark on developing research on alternative building materials in Nigeria, so that we will not solely depend on imported building materials with the weakening naira we have. So between that time and now, nothing has been done. So we need to collaborate effectively to find solutions to some of these mundane problems, not just rhetorics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing that in a minute. I'm going to move over to you, Ms. Nwokolo, in 1 minute. Give us your submission, please.
Thank you, Arit. So very quickly, for me, it will be research, focus on data. We need to get that sorted. And once we have the data, that would influence policy design, policy implementation and review. And then ultimately, we also need to focus on communication, or like I like to call it sometimes, storytelling. It's important that the government is carrying the public along with regards to what they're doing. When we have what the target is, it's important that we're carrying the public along with regards to how we're achieving that target. So I think if we focus on these 3 core areas, then we begin to scratch the surface. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Teriba? Can you unmute?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. 2 things. First is still the value proposition. What benefit is there in renewing the real estate portfolio of Nigeria, in public sector, private sector, urban, rural? Let's know the size of the benefits that we want to capture, because that will justify, the effort. Who is going to gain from the renewal? How much are they going to gain? Who is going to lose? And how do we transfer some of the gains to compensate the losses? And finally, on data, number of households that we need to provide housing for. And what is the average number of households per housing unit? We seem to imply that the 2 are the same. They're not the same. You have, housing units that can take 1,000, barracks setting. And therefore, what housing units do we require? We need to at least get the facts straight. You can't solve the problem if we go on debating what the facts are. So I would encourage that some of these things be written down. The data, the carbon footprint, the decarbonization roadmap, and the benefits from renewal and how those benefits are to be distributed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Adegunle, over to you.
Thank you so much. I would say to be conscious. We really need to be conscious about innovation. We just cannot, and I think it's been alluded, continue without being conscious about innovation and looking at the areas where we're struggling, problem areas, policy, funding, construction technology, having a clear roadmap, what we need to achieve, what we want to achieve. And of course, that's going to be fed by data, which are the points that have been made already on data. So we need to know exactly what we want to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, and what's the journey. And of course, take advantage of products that are already available, like what we're doing in Lafarge around mortar, 3D technology, and concrete. So these are the key things, really, to be conscious about innovation, being innovative as a country.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yusuf, your summation?
Yeah, thank you, Arif. For me, my closing remarks would be partly to respond to the Honourable's request. We completed this project, Pozzolana product, and will be launched Q4 this year or Q1 next year. We've developed road-term product, 3D printing project, 3D printing. So we are very research-based, research-focused. We're pushing out, we evolve products, cycle of about 1 product per year or every 2 years to solve housing needs. So my closing remarks would be that we as Lafarge Africa, we're well positioned to solve a lot of the housing challenges, infrastructure challenges. What we want to see more and what we hope to see more is that commercial collaboration of transferring what we've done in the lab and prototype to actual commercialization. For the professional bodies, including NIOB, NI/MNSC, Lafarge we are willing to partner with you, but for projects we have completed, there's no point reinventing the wheel. We need to look for new solutions to partner on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your summations. We see very clearly that it's difficult, almost impossible to assess what needs to be done next if we don't know where we are now. And I think that by the time we establish a baseline, and I'm hearing this now, moving from data, moving from financing, from cultural values, from land use to data. We need data, we need research, and then we can deploy that research most effectively. It has been such a pleasure to listen to you all. It has been mind-opening, but also very hopeful, because we're aware of the issues, but we also have a clear idea of the directions to solutions. And I think that that's a good place to start. And I definitely agree with the Honourable Chairman that this conversation needs to continue and be expanded on a little bit more. We have a poll that I would like to ask our participants to respond to very quickly. So we're going to have an opinion just pop up on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to very quickly give us your opinion on whether you found this session relevant or not. Just simply click for me a yes or a no. We'll take a minute to do that, and then we will round up today's session. In the meantime, in the interim, I would like to thank all our audience for their very involved participation. The chat boxes and the question and answer boxes have been flowing. I see people coming up with ideas. I see people taking away ideas. And I'm hoping that there will be several collaborations. There will be several points of implementation, and there will be several coordination points so that we can look back on this conversation and say, yes, it was at Concrete Ideas, the third session, where we realized that we could use this alternative technology, or where we could build this infrastructural support system, something or the other. So it has been really, really wonderful to see your very active participation. And I thank you all for being so invested in this. Let me confirm, are we still finishing our poll? Yes, our poll is done. And so we have a 97% agreement that this session was relevant. To the 3% who don't feel it was, I would really like you to type for us what you would have liked to see, and we can incorporate that and look forward to seeing what that has to do when we look at future sessions. So please give us a little bit more insight on why. And to the 97% who found it effective and relevant, I really appreciate that. Distinguished guests, it has been my pleasure to moderate this panel. And now I will hand over to the country CEO of Lafarge Africa PLC, Khalid El Dukani, for the closing remarks. Over to you, Khalid.
All right, thank you so much. And it's really a fantastic and overwhelming event, a lot of contribution with all protocol stands. I mean, thanks so much for the Honourable Minister for sparing the time for us. And we really look forward for a continuity for this session with the current panelists, with more ideas and more articulation. For me, I mean, with all the ideas that has been flowing today, there is really nothing much to add. Maybe my two comments will be, I think we need to break the ice wall of articulating the problems and making a problem definition perfect to start putting solutions. I guess we need to start by accepting what we have as a problem definition and start acting accordingly, and then develop as and when we go. Because it's always the devil in the details, and the articulation of problems are never perfect. So I don't want us to get caught very much in how accurate we are defining the problem, rather than understanding the concept of the problem, but working on the solutions as well. So we are gaining time, we are benefiting the communities and the country. My second point is Lafarge Africa, part of Wholesome, is committed to sustainability for wherever we do, wherever we go. So all our products, all our initiatives, and where we really need to get engaged is more on the sustainable solutions that might not be 100% perfect today, but it's sustainable enough to be a foundation that we can build on as and when we go. And that's really where we are pushing at. As Femi has mentioned, Jomoke has mentioned, our team members and colleagues, we have solid products. We need to sell it in the market from a conceptual approval that we can build on sustainability. It might have some challenges, but still, if we are 60%, 70% complete, we need to go for it. We need to build on it. We need to learn and develop, rather than holding back our sustainable initiatives until they are 100% perfect, because 100% does not exist. So we need to start, we need to really start pushing our ideas, our thoughts, working with our panelists here, thought leaders, and really formulating solutions that we can take to the market and get the benefit of it. Again, thank you so much all. It's been a great pleasure, great honor, and I personally look forward to seeing everybody in the coming round. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khalid.
The chairman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Arit. I think I hand over to Arit. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I just want to say, I mean, there's not much more to add other than what our CEO and our chairman has said. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for excellent moderation, Arit, once again, and to our esteemed panelists. And yes, all your feedback is taken, and we look forward to the next edition. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great day. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Geocircle business started 2012.